Hi, welcome back. We are just about ready to start cutting those notches for the frame members for this garden potting bench. What I did was I took the front board here and I used a saddle square and transferred our marks to the front of this board so I could see them when I started to use the dado stack. I've clamped everything up again in registration. We're ready to go, so let's get going. Okay, I've got a little table saw sled here. This is made from Incra components, and you can slap one of these together so fast that it's really nice for a project like this, but you can build any kind of homemade sled. It's a great way to cut these dados because once you make your first cut through the sled, the cut itself gives you your lines so that you can sight and go with the cut. I've got the boards in here and I'm not clamping the boards to the sled, but I'm going to hold it real tight. The boards are clamped together and we're ready to make our first through cut. Now I made a test and I set the dado stack so it's hopefully at the exact right depth. We'll have to make several passes and widen this notch here as we go through, but let's just get started. Now you could just pull this back with the blade running, but I choose not to do that. It only takes a few more seconds to just cut it off. Okay, I'm going to widen this out now, and this is the one in the bottom of the four legs, so we're making a 2.5 inch wide groove there. Okay, that's going to do nicely. Now all we got to do is slide this down, and this is for a 5-inch groove. Half of this groove is going to be in all four legs, and the other half will only be in these two legs. Okay, that's going to be good. Now, what I'm going to do is, because this last notch is only in the two longer legs, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this loose here and do my best to keep it all in good registration. Tighten that up. Take this off. And I'm going to take these two short legs out, and you can see there's our small notch and our half notch up here at the top of this. I'm going to set that aside, and then I'm going to pull this in here. Put another clamp down here. And then this one, I'm going to have to take off and put right up the top up here so it clears the fence on this little sled. Okay, I believe that's got it. Okay, so let's take a look now and see how we did. Oh yeah, that's going to be just fine. And yeah, nice tight fit. Nice tight fit there. And let's see up here. Yeah, a little tighter, but it fits. Very good. All right, so we have the legs for one garden bench ready. I'm going to do the other set of legs now, and I'll show you how I transferred those markings and changed everything over, flipped everything upside down and got ready. Okay? All right, so this is my other set of legs, and the marks are up here on the top that we made to locate our notches. And what I want to do is I want to turn this over as a group so I don't get things disoriented. Kind of heavy, just like that. And then when we run it through to make the notches, I want to go at it from this direction. So what that means is that I need to transfer the marks that were on top up to this side of this board. And what's really indispensable for that is a saddle square. Now this is a woodpecker's mini square, but it also works as a saddle square because it has this little cutout here that allows it to go over the corner without touching the corner. Make sure you get nice registration marks. And I'm going to try to do this on the opposite side of what I would normally do, but basically what you want to do is you want to put your pencil where it's on that mark, and then you can make a mark on the other side and it'll be in exactly the same place. So if you locate your pencil on your previous mark, this one's trying to give me a hard time. Yeah, just like that. And then just transfer it to the top. And we'll do that right down the row. I'm going to do it on the other side, which is because that's what I'm used to, being left-handed. You can do this with a regular square. You just have to be a little bit more careful. Saddle square of any type, though, is a handy gadget to have in your shop. And this little mini square, since it kind of serves dual purpose, it works as a square as well. You can even use this to check the square of plane blades and chisel blades while you're sharpening them. So this is a handy gadget to have. So I'm going to put this here, and we'll get our ends lined up. And we'll use a square to do that. And once those are lined up, then I'm going to clamp them together. I may have to relocate these clamps once we get over to the table saw. But the idea here is to keep these flat and keep them in good solid registration. And we're going to check that by picking this up and looking at the underside. Yep, our marks look good. All right, so now we're going to take this over to the table saw and I'll cut these notches. All right, so just give me a minute. I'm going to get these notches cut and then we're going to start assembling the frames. I've moved my outfeed table out into an open space in my shop to make it easier to get around all four sides in order to do this sub-assembly. Now what we're working on is the frame for the top of the bench. The frame for the shelf of the bench is identical to this, except this back piece is the same width as the side pieces. We'll kind of call this a backsplash piece for lack of better terminology. What I want to do is I want to pre-drill holes and then countersink those holes so that the screw heads go all the way in, they're not sticking out at all. And then I want to remove the screws and put glue on here and then put the screws back in. And the reason I'm doing that on all four corners first is because if I was trying to pre-drill holes, countersink, and drive in the screws with glue on it, it wouldn't give me much time to square up the assembly after everything's done. Once these are pre-drilled, I can put the glue on, run the screws in quickly, and then work on making sure the assembly is nice and square. Now what I'm doing for the holes, I'm using a 7/32 inch bit, and I'm working on placing that pretty carefully just to make sure that I get it so that it runs pretty much in the center of this board, and driving in all of the way the full depth of the bit. The screws that I'm using are 1 5/8 inches long, and these screws are coarse thread. They're stainless steel, and they use a Torx T20 bit to drive them in. And once I get the hole drilled, then I'm using the countersink bit and countersinking the hole. And then I'm using a driver with the T20 bit and driving the screw in. And I'm driving the screw in not quite all the way. That'll allow me to really draw it up tight when I do the final assembly. And since I'm going to pull those screws back out and put some glue on there, I think that's a better way to go. So I'm going to go around and do these four corners, and then we'll do the glue up. Okay, so we're ready for the glue up. I think I've got everything situated, so here's what we're going to do. Now on these side pieces, I put a little chalk mark on the top with an arrow pointing towards what is ostensibly the backsplash on the unit, and that's just to make sure I keep the orientation exactly the same while I'm applying glue. And what I want to do first is put an extremely thin bead of glue on both ends, and I want to let that soak into the grain just a little bit. And if it gets down into those screw holes, that wouldn't hurt anything either. Just let that sit there for just a second. Do the same thing down here. Alright, so now we will actually put our glue on. And I'm putting a pretty good little bit. I'm going to get some squeeze out, but we'll get past that. And I'm going to go ahead and put our screws in. And now we'll get the glue on this other end. All right, now what we want to do is make sure we've got this nice and square. And I'm using these squaring clamps to start off to square this. And you'll have to excuse that obnoxious little sound, but that's my little portable air compressor, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that in just a second. Now, you may see already the problem that I've got. This board is a little bit bowed, so what I'm doing is I'm just lightly putting a clamp on here just to take that bow out. That's going to disappear when we put the final assembly together, so it's not going to matter. However, I'll get it out for right now. Okay, that looks pretty good. It looks pretty square. So now, just to ensure the squareness stays that way while it's drying, I've got these are the pieces that we ripped off the side of the cedar. There's some scrap. I just cut them down in length. And all I'm doing is taking 23 gauge pins and putting them in here. And that's going to hold the assembly square while it dries. And after this is dry, pulling those pins out is a breeze. I don't see any serious squeeze out any place, so I think we're in pretty good shape there. That looks good. That looks good. Okay, so now the last thing is I'm going to take a T20 driver, hand driver. This is a Festool deal, really cool. And I'm going to tighten these up by hand to make sure that they are fully flush with or beneath the surface of the wood so they don't interfere with our next assembly step. A little bit more control with a hand driver. And knock on wood, we haven't split anything yet. Okay, let that sit for about 15 minutes, and then there's 3 more of these to install. 1 more like this, and then the 2 for the lower shelf, which are exactly the same, except this piece is the same width as that piece. We can get all those assembled, and then we're ready to put together our garden potting bench. Well, I'm going to grab a quick cup of coffee, and you should too. But as soon as you're done, click on Part B, and we'll jump right back into this project.